hurricane season has officially begun, but everyone, no matter where they live, needs to prepare for a disaster. We've had record flooding, tornadoes, and disasters in all parts of the country this year. But there are 4 simple things that everyone can do to protect themselves. First, you want to review your insurance. You want to make sure you have enough insurance to completely rebuild your home and replace all of your personal possessions. The second thing is you want to ask about flood and earthquake insurance, because while a standard home and renter's insurance policy will provide coverage for things like a hurricane, a windstorm, a tornado, you're not going to be covered for flooding or for an earthquake. You're going to need to get separate insurance for these types of disasters. The third thing is you need to conduct a home inventory. This is a simple list of all your personal possessions with their estimated value. This makes buying the right amount of insurance much easier, as well as filing a claim. And the Insurance Information Institute has free web-based software to make this process as easy as possible. And lastly, you need to have an evacuation plan. This is going to include knowing where you're going to go and what you're going to take with you. And if you have pets or the elderly in your family, take a little bit of extra time now to think about what you're going to do with them in an evacuation.
Okay, frequently during a flooding event, it's important for us to be thinking about the propane tank that might be sitting outside of the house. And there are some things that we need to think about long in advance, and other things that we need to be thinking about if a flood event is imminent. And we're at a propane tank here today, and the first thing that we're going to look at is that if we're expecting a flood event to occur, we probably should be looking at filling the tank, because that full tank will weigh more and will be more secure than if we had an empty tank. In essence, with an empty tank, we just have a cork or bobber that's going to float away. And so as we look at a propane tank, typically we'll have a lid similar to this, and so you just lift that up, and there will be a gauge that will indicate what percentage of fill occurs in this tank. We would want to look at trying to have that tank filled well in advance of the flood event if we are able to know that a flood might be imminent. The reason for that is that frequently we'll get into a situation where roads may become impassable, or for other reasons, it's just a supply and demand issue sometimes, whether they can get to your tank and have it filled. So this would be one thing to look at in advance. The next thing would be to make sure that you know how to shut off the fuel. If a flooding is going to occur, then we'll want to come into a tank and close the valve so that we don't have the potential of the propane coming out of that tank in a flood event. And as most valves, you would turn clockwise or to the right to shut that down. You turn it left to open, just like you would any other type of valve or anything, even a jar, as you're opening it. One other thing to consider, again, maybe in advance of that flood event, is to look at how we have this tank anchored, or do we need to have that tank anchored. And for a propane tank, typically it's going to look very similar to this one, where we'll have legs on the bottom, and ideal would be to put down a concrete pad that would have anchor bolts. Those anchor bolts would come through into the feet, and you would anchor it down that way. Other options that are shown are to put a strap over the top with anchors that are screwed into the ground. Of course, that would need to be done in advance, and one of the concerns with doing that is, do we end up with rusting or deterioration wherever those straps go over the tank? Another benefit of having the concrete there is that it's a nice heavy weight, and it will serve as a drain area to move the water away from the tank. If we don't have some kind of anchor or strap over that tank and flooding is imminent, we will want to try to tie it down in some way so it doesn't float away. Just a chain to something that is a permanent attached, whether it's a tree or something else, so that we make sure that this propane tank doesn't end up floating down the river. In this situation, what they have actually done is they have an earthen dike around the house, and that then gives us the opportunity to have the propane tank inside that diked area and protected from the flooding. If we put the tank to the outside, then of course we need to be anchoring it and being more concerned about that tank in a flood event.
It's important when you first come to the house that you haven't been in yet, you do a full walk around all the way outside of the entire house and look for structural damage to the house, because this one looks fine when we first come up to it, but as we further inspect it, if we didn't have this fire line tape here, we noticed that the entire foundation behind these bushes is caved in from this corner all the way around the corner, and as we walk around we'll see more damage. This house is not structurally safe to go into. So as we walk around over to this corner, this porch, you can't see underneath it, but that foundation has gone underneath that, so that porch in its essence floating up above there, the supports might be gone from that porch too. And then over here, you can see straight through that house. You need to make sure to do that walk around first thing. The other thing to do when you do the walk around of the house is to look for the warning labels that might be on the windows and doors. You'll have to look around and see, depends on the type of the house where they're going to post these, but for example here the gas utility company has posted a warning what's done and with the information that you need, including phone numbers that you can contact them, as well as the electric company, what they've done, and contact phone numbers included. Also, the city fire department has come through in this particular house and labeled this house as unsafe to enter because of foundation issues on the outside. Another thing we want to look at, now we've already looked at this porch to make sure, we've looked underneath and around to make sure it's solid, but examples like this glass door that's caved in here, the homeowner might be tempted to walk into that glass, but easily one of these big shards of glass could come and just slice down anywhere on them. So just absolutely no way do you want to go in through these kind of openings there. As we're doing the initial walk around, the thing we want to look for too is to make sure the gas is off if there's gas service to the house, as well as electricity. And in this case, you can see that the gas company's been here where they've capped off. They've actually pulled the meter in this case. That won't always happen, but they've capped off the gas line coming in, and they've shut it off and sealed it to make sure it can't be turned back on, to make sure that valve is shut.
Being ready for a major disaster, it's no longer the realm of militiamen hidden in the mountains.
A shaky economy, recent catastrophes fueling this growing movement of soft-core survivalists who could be your next-door neighbors. 7 News reporter Jacqueline Allen introduces all of us to Colorado's Preppers Network. It's a story you'll see only on 7 News.
If there were ever a disaster in Frederick, Colorado,
from the outside looking in, nobody could really know.
This house is probably where you'd want to be.
Gonna tickle you.
Ron and Heather Douglas and their 6 children may seem carefree, but they are new members of a growing online network getting ready for the worst. They call themselves preppers.
Is this paranoid?
No.
We don't think so. We think we're very normal. But
Remember post-Hurricane Katrina? The government was criticized for not delivering food and water fast enough, even in Colorado.
a couple of years ago, we had 3-4 foot snow. People couldn't leave their house. We had neighbors that didn't have enough food for 3 days.
But the Douglases were preppers when preppers weren't cool. Starting with a 72-hour emergency kit for everyone in the family.
Granola bars, raisins.
Complete with food, water,
Flashlight, glow stick,
and supplies for 3 days. For staying home,
This is our emergency water storage.
they have 3 months water supply, a year's worth of oil changes, and a winter's warmth for their wood-burning stove.
The Douglas family has a food pantry to rival a grocery store. Enough food to feed 8 people for a year.
It can start as simple as just buying a few extra things at the grocery store when you're there.
They also stock up from their backyard garden.
I really like to can, and so when we can grow a lot of it ourselves, it makes it so they eat more nutritious food, and we also can put it up and save money.
All this prepping has already paid off.
I was out off-roading in our vehicle, and we got stuck. And I was way out there, and I had the whole family with me.
The car's emergency preparedness kit came in handy. The family camped while Dad hiked to get help.
I think it's our responsibility to be prepared for circumstances that happen in our lives.
They're no survivalists, they live in the suburbs, but they say the preppers movement is the reason they can feel carefree.
I think there's a sense of freedom that comes with being independent and relying upon yourself for things. I don't think it can come any other way.
In Frederick, Jacqueline Allen, 7 News.
Also recommend having a financial reserve, at least 3 months living expenses set aside in case you lose your job. For tips on creating your own food storage pantry and what you should include in your emergency supply kit, go to thedenverchannel.com.
Oh hi, welcome home. I'm Alan Foucault. Well, it sure is nice to finally get a taste of some spring weather. Sure felt like a long time coming. I've even seen a few crocuses starting to pop out. But you know, it was a tough winter. We had below normal temperatures. We had tons of snow. We saw all kinds of roof collapses this year. And now that it's spring, we've been looking at all these flooding conditions. This weather really drives home the point that having your home prepared for these emergencies is critical. Once an emergency situation develops, the time to prepare is gone. All you can do then is try to cope. And anything you can do now to prepare will feel like money in the bank. This is a portable generator. It's small, but it's powerful enough to run most critical home systems, such as a refrigerator or a furnace. These units range in price from a couple of $100s to several thousand for larger whole house systems. Buying a generator is only the first step. Electrical codes require the generators be installed with this device, called a transfer switch. It is attached to the home's electrical service panel and prevents both regular line voltage and generator power from ever being connected at the same time. Some homeowners try to backfeed generator power through a clothes dryer outlet. This is illegal and could potentially send dangerous voltage back to the lines on the street. With a simple flip of a transfer switch, generator power can be directed to the furnace, lights, or a sump pump. In fact, I bought my generator because of the sump pump. I was worried that the occasional basement flooding that we get here could become very serious if the pump was disabled by a power outage. It's also very important that you properly maintain your generator. You want to run the unit for at least 20 minutes every month to keep everything in good working order. Any fuel that's not used up after about 6 months really should be replaced with fresh. And ultimately, if you do end up needing to count on your generator for an extended period of time, you're going to have plenty of fuel on hand. Remember, if the power is out, you may not be able to get any more at the gas station either. There are a few other important things to remember. Floodwaters are often contaminated by septic system overflows. Boil all your well water for at least 10 minutes to assure its purity, and never allow the kids to play in the floodwater. Clean drinking water is essential for survival. A bathtub full of clean drinking water can maintain a family for days. Of course, you will want to keep a supply of canned foods for an emergency, but don't forget an old-fashioned hand-operated can opener. A good rule of thumb is to try to be prepared for at least 3 days of self-sufficient living. You'll sleep better knowing that your home is ready for the worst. For Havel Journal, I'm Marlon Foucault, at home.
In this session, we are going to look at complex emergencies, a major form of public health disasters in the Eastern Africa region. Let us start by looking at this scenario. A certain district Y has been affected by a 10-year conflict in which over 200,000 people have been internally displaced and they live in camps. They cannot return to their homes for fear of the rebels. The living conditions and health status of people in these camps is very poor. This is an example of a complex emergency. What then is a complex emergency? A complex emergency is a deep social crisis in which large numbers of people die from war, displacement, and hunger owing to man-made disasters. This is a definition by Klugman. It is also defined as a humanitarian crisis with a breakdown in authority due to internal or external conflicts that requires international response. This definition is by the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA. Characteristics of a complex emergency include violence and massive displacement of people, administrative, economic, and political collapse. It is long-lasting and widespread. That means it affects a large number of people. There is usually exploitation and worsening of existing differences in civil society, like economic differences, social differences, political differences, religious differences, and others. There is often dispute over legitimacy of authority, usually between government and other formal or informal groups like rebels, insurgents, etc. The vulnerable population is at greatest risk. Large-scale humanitarian assistance is often needed. There is usually hindrance of assistance by political or military forces, meaning that some groups that have power may prevent others from receiving assistance. Complex emergencies are usually political. They often result in catastrophic public health problems. Complex emergencies often include wars and civil strife, armed aggression, insurgency, and other actions resulting in displaced persons and refugees. They usually have a political undertone. Can you name some in your region? Look at these pictures and try to understand some of the effects of complex emergencies. Priority interventions in refugee or mass displacement of people situations. There is need for a rapid needs assessment. There is need to provide water and sanitation to affected people. There is need to provide food and nutrition to affected people, need to provide shelter and site planning, health care, control of communicable diseases, and coordination of the humanitarian response. What is involved in a rapid needs assessment? Health priorities are identified on the basis of rapid collection and analysis of data. Information is collected on background displacement, risk factors, resources required, etc. It is important to use a guideline based on standards. For instance, the SPHERE standards. Water and sanitation. Drinking water is a top priority in complex emergencies. Both quality and quantity are important. During the first days, 20 liters of water per person per day should be the target. Poor and inadequate water supply is associated with sanitation-related diseases. Sanitation. In the first days of displacement, emergency latrine should be provided for every 50 to 100 persons. But these should be improved to one latrine for 20 persons, and ideally one latrine per family when the conflict improves, or the situation improves, or the humanitarian situation is addressed. Food and nutrition. Population movement, both cause and consequence, is both a cause and a consequence of food shortage. Malnutrition is an important contributory cause of death during complex emergencies. Food distribution should be planned, effective, and equitable. Shelter and site planning is an important aspect of complex emergencies, especially where large numbers of people are displaced. Shelter is important for protection, security, privacy. It is recommended that each person has 3.5 square meters of available space for their personal use. Appropriate shelter sites should be selected. They should be in a secure location away from the border. Availability of land and access to water, and the location should be socially and culturally agreeable to the affected persons. Healthcare aims to reduce mortality in the emergency phase of displacement. Curative, preventive, and rehabilitative care is crucial. Manuals and guidelines should be available for standardization of treatment. A tier system of healthcare is important, that is hospital, health center, and outreach services. Determine human resource needs, recruit and train health workers, and place them where they are needed. Control of communicable diseases is very important during complex emergencies. Intervention strategies include attacking the sources of infection, like curative care, isolation of highly infectious persons. Prevent transmission of illness through environmental sanitation, personal hygiene, and health education. Protect the susceptible persons, like measles immunization, chemoprophylaxis for selected diseases, and provision of bed nets. There is need for continuous surveillance to detect epidemics and to assess effectiveness of interventions. Coordination is another vital part of management of complex emergencies. The rationale is that there are usually many actors involved in the response. The goal is to achieve the greatest impact through integration of activities. Establish clear leadership and coordination. Ensure priorities are shared between the intervening partners. rationalize services by establishing common standards, and ensure good communication among stakeholders.
You'll do anything to keep your loved ones safe. As a member of the NASA family, you owe it to them to prepare a workable safety plan in the event of a local or national emergency. Whether you're here at NASA, at home, or on the road, take stock of your emergency supplies. 1. For an on-site emergency, have an office flyaway kit stocked with breakfast bars, water, medicines, sensible walking shoes, and any items needed to sustain you for a reasonable amount of time. 2. At home, keep a 7-day supply of bottled water, easy-to-prepare foods, and other essentials needed during a prolonged disruption of services and utilities. Also, give extra attention to flashlights and batteries, weather radio, supplemental heating and cooking devices, plus tools for emergency repairs. Number 3. Your car should have a minimum of a half tank of fuel at all times. Maintain it with oil changes, proper tire inflation, and topped-off wiper fluid. A portable emergency kit should include blankets, toys and games for kids, and plenty of bottled water and snacks. Plan how you'll contact your family if you become separated. Designate an out-of-state contact everyone can tag up with by phone, text, or email. Reliable and up-to-date information may not be readily available, so use common sense in determining your situation and, wherever possible, closely monitor TV, radio, and the Internet. Should it be necessary to shelter in place at home, be ready to bring your family and pets inside. Lock doors, close windows, air vents, and fireplace dampers. Turn off fans, air conditioning, and forced air heating systems. Grab your emergency supply kit. Go into an interior room with few windows if possible. Circumstances may require leaving your home in a hurry, so plan where and how you and/or your family will go. In poor weather and travel conditions, you'll want options. Agree on several destinations, each in a different direction. But first, be prepared to meet at home or another prearranged location in or outside your immediate neighborhood. Turn off your water and gas lines. Know alternate evacuation routes, and especially if you don't have a car, learn another means of transportation out of your area. Grab your emergency supply kit. Lock the door behind you. Remember, your car should have at least a half tank of gas. Take your pets, but know that only service animals may be permitted in public shelters. Call or email your out-of-state contact and give them your destination and route. You've developed your plan, now it's time to get it ready. Make a list of everything you'll need for your emergency kits. Check off what you already have, then get to the store for the rest. When possible, buy extras like batteries, since some essentials might be in short supply at your destination. Don't wait, shop today. Your family's safety may depend on it. Of course, no plan will work unless everyone knows his or her role. Where do I go? Who do I meet? Make sure everyone knows what to do in each emergency scenario. Now that your family's familiar with its plan, it's time to practice it. Like astronauts who rehearse over and over and over again, you'll need to practice your family preparedness plan until it becomes second nature. To keep everyone fresh, hold monthly drills. If the unexpected should happen, everyone will be grateful you thought and planned ahead. So remember, 1. Pre-flight, know your stuff. 2. Know your mission, develop your plan. 3. Mission assurance, get prepared. 4. The launch, practice your plan. You'll feel more secure knowing you've done what you can to help keep your loved ones and our NASA family safe. For more detailed information, go to www.nasa.gov/HQ-emergency and click on the Personal Family Preparedness tab.
If floodwater threatens your property, here are some sandbag dike tips that could save your home. A sandbag dike is the most widely used temporary homeowner protection against rising water. Following a few simple rules will help your sandbag dike achieve maximum strength and effectiveness. British Columbia has sandbagging machines deployed throughout the province. These machines can be transported easily and quickly on flatbed trailers to any point accessible by road or rail. They are capable of filling 5,000 bags an hour. While these machines are mobile, they aren't very suitable to move into a residential area. You should be prepared to fill your personal sandbags manually. Locate the sandbag dike on high ground, close to the building or improvement being protected. This will minimize the length and number of bags needed. Allow room for a strong, wide base. Dig a shallow trench, 1 sandbag deep and 2 sandbags wide, to provide a foundation for the dike. For maximum stability, the dike should be 3 times as wide as it is high. Therefore, if your sandbag dike is 1 meter high, it should be 3 meters wide at the base. If it's too narrow at the bottom, this could happen. Sandbags should never be more than half full. It is not necessary to tie them shut. Turn the flap end of the bag upstream. Spread and position the open end flap of the bag so it will be covered by another bag. This secures the sand and the bag. Place the bags at right angles in alternating layers. Be sure to stagger the rows by half a bag so the floodwater can't access a continuous seam to flow through. Walk on the bags to tamp them into place. Take care to avoid puncturing the bags. A sandbag dike should provide significant temporary protection for your home and possessions. However, if rising water forces you to leave your home, remember these precautions. Shut off all electrical power to the house. Shut off the gas supply at the valve. For oil-fired equipment, shut off the fuel line at the tank. Place a weight on top of the tank. For propane tanks, turn off the valve and secure it. Shut off the water supply. Plug all basement sewage connections. Pesticides, fertilizers, and other possible water polluters should be moved to higher levels. Gather a few necessary items to take with you, such as blankets, warm clothing, waterproof footwear, a flashlight, a battery-powered radio, any special medication, and your identification. Do not return home until Emergency Operations Headquarters announce that it is safe to do so. Keep in mind that most flood fatalities are associated with people in vehicles. Just over a half a meter of water can sweep a vehicle away. If your vehicle gets trapped in water, leave it and walk to higher ground. For more information, contact your local community emergency program.
Getting yourself and your family prepared in case of an emergency takes less time and effort than you may think. But if a disaster hits your community, having a plan for what to do and stocking up on some basic supplies can make all the difference in how safely and comfortably you make it through the crisis.
In case of a major emergency, if you call 911, we may not be able to come out as quickly as you'd like us because we're going to be overwhelmed. We're going to have so many different situations at hand. So if you are prepared at home and you have a plan, then you'll be able to cope with it until help arrives.
In an emergency, everything goes out the window. Your emotions, the fear factor, confusion. If everybody's aware of the plan and can execute the plan, that increases your survivability.
Take a few minutes to check out the tips and tools available on ready.gov that make getting prepared easy. There are a few basics. First, learn about the types of risks that could affect your area. No matter where you live, there is a natural or man-made disaster that could strike without warning. Knowing what to do before, during, and after these types of events ahead of time will help you make an effective plan. Then, take a moment to sit with your family and decide how you will get in contact with each other, where you will go, and what you will do in the event of an emergency.
Having a plan that everyone in the family is aware of can be very helpful in those situations where the family members are not in the same place.
You can use the Family Emergency Plan available on ready.gov to organize family information and help you develop a plan that works for you. Identify someone locally and someone out of state who will be your contact person in case of an emergency. And learn how to send updates via text messaging to your friends and family.
One of the things that we've noticed in the past during major emergencies, both the regular phone lines as well as the cell phone lines were overwhelmed. But people were still able to text message vital pieces of information in terms of location, nature of problem, or just to text to say all is well.
Once you've established your plan, print out a list available on ready.gov and start to put together an emergency kit. A standard emergency kit includes water, food, and medicine to sustain all members of your household for at least 3 days. Visit ready.gov for a complete list of suggested items, along with recommendations for how to prepare a family emergency plan. Even if you just add a few items at a time, very quickly you will have a great kit that will ensure you and your family are prepared for an emergency. Also, be sure to keep a copy of the emergency plan together with copies of important documents like birth certificates, insurance policies, and financial forms in your emergency supply kit. And don't forget to maintain your kit and plan throughout the year, replacing items prior to their expiration and keeping contact information current.
Remember that emergency preparedness is not something you can do once and forget about it. Make sure that you review your kit periodically, you update any medication or food and supplies, and also that you periodically review it with your family.
Inquire about emergency plans at places where your family spends time, like work, school, faith organizations, and recreational activities. Finally, get to know the local resources available in your community. Ready.gov can link you to local emergency information and contact numbers, information about sheltering and evacuation, and how to get local alerts and warnings. We can't predict where or when the next disaster will happen, but we do know that when the time comes, individuals and families who have taken even a few steps to prepare themselves will feel more confident and secure in their ability to get through it. Check out the information on ready.gov and get started today.